Shalom and good day all, this is the Healing29 back again for another DC comic review, and in this DC comic review I will be reviewing Superman Action Comics 1037, followed by Nightwing, the 2021 annual by Tom the One Trick Pony Taylor. So, first things first, let's make a start on Action Comics. So, before I get started in giving the review for Action Comics, I will not be covering the backstory, but I have already read the backstory in relation to this, and I must admit I did enjoy it, and I think I slightly enjoyed it a little bit more than the main story. So now it's time to jump into the review of the main story. Starting off with, does this cover in any way, shape or form connect to something that is happening inside of the actual main story that happens here? And the answer is yes, it is. Yes, it does. To which I gave the cover a 7 out of 10. I'll now show some of the art around the beginning, middle, and of course the end. And I'll give the rating for it. Now this is some of the art around the beginning. And of course we can see the new Mongol. We've got Midnighter, Apollo, plus a couple of other characters there. I'll now jump to the middle, and this is some of the warring that's happening on War World. And last but not least, some of the art towards the end. For the internal art, I gave it a 7 out of 10. Now it's time to move into the story. As you know, there are things that I personally enjoy in my storytelling. And starting off with first things first, did this story have any comic book references to any of the previous issues before it, or even something that begins where this story arc makes its first appearance? The answer is no, it didn't, and because of that, it lost points. Moving into the next one, did we get any references in regards to time? Not at all, and again, it actually lost some points. Moving into the next thing, the location that were pointed out in the story. The first, of course, being Warworld, and the second being the United Planets. We actually got to see some of the things that were happening there, as they were also overviewing the situation, but doing absolutely nothing about it. The cast of characters consisting of Superman, Mongol, Junie, Midnighter, Apollo, Leah and Omak, as they also went up against some of the hordes of characters which are also under the new present Mogul in the story. This story felt like it lacked some depth, especially with the missing things, which would have helped the story come off a little bit better. Like, I wouldn't have minded if Philip Kennedy Johnston sort of like gave us what the time on the planet of Warworld was. I think that would have been nice to sort of like learn about in the galaxy. in the Star Wars galaxy, or in the Star Wars universe. Like, what time is it that Superman is fighting this Mongol on World? And even the comic references still wouldn't go astray. So for the story, I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. It's an interesting story, but without those elements, it does lack a little bit in quality. I'll now jump to the next comic, which I'll be reviewing, which is Nightwing. Well, now it's time to review Nightwing by Tom Taylor. And starting off with first things first, in regards to covers. And as you can see here, I've got two covers here. One is the regular and the other is the variant. And I definitely enjoy them both. And do these covers in any way connect to something that's happening in the story? Sure enough, they both do, and they both get a 7.5 out of 10 from me. I'll now show you some of the internal art. Around the beginning, middle, and end, and I'll use the variant cover to show this. So this is some of the art from the beginning, and as you can see here, we've got what looks to be, but the question is it Red Hood or is it someone else? I'll now move to around the middle, and as you can see here, we've got a bit of a flashback between Dick Grayson and Jason Todd, which I think is really good, and I like the costume here that's being used too. And of course, good old Alfred in the background. And last but not least, some of the art towards the end. For this, I gave the internal art 7 out of 10. Now it's time to move into the story rating, which consists of elements that I personally enjoy in stories. Let's see how well Tom Taylor did this time. First things first, did we get any comic references? No, we didn't, but did that affect the total rating of the story? Not overall. So moving into the next thing, how did we go time-wise? Well, in the time, it also worked in relation with some of the locations, which I'll be addressing next. Going in this order, then, now, and later. Then working in relation to the Titan Tower and also Wayne Manor. The now and later. Moved into the present day of the former home of Bruce Wayne, and it was also used in relation to a particular restaurant to which Nightwing and Red Hood went to. The cast of characters consisting of Barbara Gordon, Nightwing, of course Red Hood, Alfred, and last but not least, the big surprise of Clayface, who made his appearance. I definitely enjoyed the story. I think this is one of his better in the Nightwing runs, compared to some of the terrible issues he's done before. I think he's good for one-shot stories, but once it comes to long stories, he can tend to suffer. And I'm talking about Tom Taylor. But most of all, I think he's still way better as an Elseworld story writer, not as a mainstream DC canon story writer. Well, until then, let's keep it colourful and have yourself an awesome day.